Hey guys, tonight we're walking through one of the strangest, gentlest, and most thoroughly engineered social machines in American history, the post-war system that took an entire generation of women, handed them a crinoline and a casserole dish, and quietly rearranged the exits. Not with laws exactly, not with locked doors, with home economics class and 17 magazine and a guidance counselor who smiled very warmly while losing your college application. Thank you, sincerely, to whoever suggested this one. I hope you're somewhere comfortable, possibly wearing fewer than 20 yards of netting. Take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this kind of history, the kind where the system is so airtight it takes you a decade just to notice the ceiling. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always somehow 4 a.m. somewhere on this map, and tonight that's where I'd put my money. Dim the lights, turn on a fan for the soft white noise, get comfortable, settle the blanket around your shoulders, and maybe resist the urge to reorganize your kitchen before your husband gets home. Have you ever wondered how a country that put 19 million women to work in 4 years managed to convince most of them to go back home inside of one? Could you survive a guidance counselor who told you, with genuine kindness, that nursing was probably more realistic than medicine? And what do you do with the women who read all the right magazines, attended all the right classes, and still ended up writing 4,000 letters a week to a woman who didn't exist? And now, congratulations! You've just woken up in a brand new tract house on a freshly poured Long Island street in the spring of 1956, the year the median American woman first married at 20.1. The kitchen window faces the backyard. The linoleum is still cold. Somewhere in the hallway, a crinoline is already rustling. Good luck. You stand in your bedroom at 6:45 a.m. while your mother feeds the rubber girdle up your legs. You are 13. The garment has hooks down the side and a small reinforced panel across the front, and you cannot fasten it on your own because the elastic is rated to compress an adult woman's abdomen by 1.5 inches. Your mother kneels behind you and tugs. The hooks line up one by one. There is no discussion. The girdle is not optional, and neither is the help. Over this goes a crinoline petticoat, up to 20 yards of stiff netting sewn into concentric rings that push your skirt out like a satellite dish with ambitions. It rustles, loudly. The sound it makes on the linoleum hallway is somewhere between a whisper and a small fire, and every other girl in the building is making the exact same sound. So by 8 o'clock the school corridor has the acoustic texture of a room full of gift wrap being aggressively opened. Then comes the skirt itself, fitted at the waist, flared at the knee, absolutely non-negotiable in its shape. Your range of motion below the hip is now approximately that of a mailbox. The face comes next. You have learned to apply it in layers, the way a contractor does drywall, foundation first, then powder, then a swipe of tangy natural across your lips. A lipstick so nearly invisible it takes a minute to notice you're wearing it, and another minute to understand why you are. Max Factor's Pancake Compact sits next to the Coty powder on the bathroom shelf, both marketed to girls your age. The cosmetics industry crossed $1 billion in annual sales this year. Some of that is your mother's cold cream. Some of it is yours. You are 12 in the earliest version of this scene, possibly younger. You're not really preparing for the school day. The school day is the container, small, predictable, and lightly insulting. What you're actually preparing for is a social evaluation that has been running continuously since approximately the 5th grade and will not stop until a man proposes marriage. Your posture, your laugh volume, your ability to seem interested without seeming eager, these are all being graded, just not on a transcript. 17 magazine ran a column this year explaining the correct angle at which to tilt your head while a boy is talking. The angle has a name. You have practiced it. Margaret Tully, the home economics teacher, walks between the rows with her gradebook held flat against her forearm like a clipboard, checking seams. Your apron must be tied in a bow, not a knot. A knot means you don't understand the bow, or worse, that you don't care about the bow, and the bow is the point. The kitchen unit smells of institutional cooking and fabric sizing, and something that is probably ambition, slowly evaporating. Today's lesson is on setting a table for company, which is basically a logistics exam except the passing grade is a husband and the testing window is the next 7 years. Margaret Tully will appear later, in 3rd period, with the same gradebook flat against her forearm. She will pause at your station and look at the way you've folded your napkin. She will not say anything. She will look at it for approximately 1.5 seconds, the way you might look at a child's drawing of a horse, and then she will move to the next station, and the napkin will get a quiet downgrade in the column on the back of the form that you are not allowed to see. You finish your hair with Aquanet. The smell hits first, sharp, chemical, aerosol bright, like someone pressurized a can of optimism and added acetone. It locks your curls into position with a rigidity that will outlast the school day, possibly the decade. Then you pick up your textbooks, heavy with institutional binding glue and the particular smell of a library that has never once had a window open, and you head for the door. Your saddle shoes squeak once against the floor wax. The girdle does not give. You count 7 petticoats stacked on the chair in your room and try to decide which one to wear today. Each is a tube of stiffened net, bridal tulle, sized down for a schoolgirl, and the largest contains roughly 20 yards of fabric. The crinolines determine the silhouette of the skirt above them, and the silhouette determines what other girls will say at lunch. You pick the medium one and put it on without help. You have already decided which girls will be wearing the largest. The petticoat rustles when you walk. This is intentional. The rustle on linoleum hallway is a form of announcement, something between presence and claim, and the girls who wear the smaller ones either haven't figured this out yet or have made a different calculation entirely. Your saddle shoes squeak against the waxed floor. The radiator clanks and breathes. The hallway smells like chalk dust and floor polish and someone's Aquanet, applied generously enough to qualify as a weather event. Let's talk about the girdle. You put it on before the crinoline with your mother's help because at 13 the clasps are still complicated. It's a foundation garment. That's what it's called. Foundation, as in the thing everything else is built on. The garment is beige and firm and does not have opinions about your comfort. It does have opinions about your posture, your silhouette, and the exact distance between you and anything that requires bending at the waist. You have learned to pick things up from the floor by squatting with your knees together, like a very formal frog. Christian Dior debuted the new look in 1947, nipped waist, padded hips, full skirt, and by the early 50s it had moved from Paris ateliers into mass-market American department stores, and then into your mother's recommendation about what you should wear to school. The silhouette requires the petticoat requires the girdle requires your mother's hands at the clasps. The whole assembly takes 23 minutes and produces a girl who walks down a hallway sounding like a festive, faintly damp, slightly aggressive shrub. Now consider what you're wearing this to. It's third period. The subject is home economics. The classroom smells like institutional cooking and fabric sizing, and something faintly chemical that clings to the sewing machines. Mrs. Aldrich writes the day's topic on the board in careful cursive. Family relations, creating a welcoming home environment. This is a class. It meets 4 times a week. It counts toward your graduation requirements, the same as algebra. The algebra teacher does not instruct you on laugh volume. Mrs. Aldrich does. Not in those words, and not all at once, but across weeks of curriculum the instruction accumulates. The right kind of laugh, bright, not too loud, not too long, the right conversational posture, the right tilt of the head when a boy is explaining something you already understand. The November Times, 17 times, is folded into your textbook on page 42, open to the article on listening posture. You don't need both. You have both anyway. A girl named Patricia sits 2 rows over and has the largest crinoline in the room. She already knew about the laugh. She laughs now at something the girl next to her says bright, brief, tilted slightly, and misses. Aldrich glances over with the satisfied expression of a woman watching a student correctly execute a lab procedure. Patricia, 2 rows over, leans down to retrieve a fallen pencil. She does not bend at the waist. The crinoline doesn't allow it. She squats with both knees pressed together, scoops the pencil with her left hand, and returns to vertical in one continuous motion, the way a person operates a foot pedal. The whole movement takes about 3 seconds. Nobody watches because nobody needs to watch. Every girl in the room is built to retrieve a pencil the same way. You already know the position. You've known it since you were 12 and your mother brought home the Max Factor Pancake Foundation and explained that this was how girls took care of themselves now. You are 13. The median American woman will marry at 20. You have 7 years, and the crinoline is already working. You walk to school in temperatures of 19 degrees wearing a wool skirt, a cardigan, and bobby socks. Pants are prohibited in your district's dress code, which the principal recites at every assembly. Your saddle shoes are wet through by the 3rd block. The school heats its hallways to 74 degrees year-round, So by homeroom, your feet have gone from numb to throbbing in approximately 11 minutes. You sit at your desk in third period and wait for sensation to return to your toes. The boys in your class are wearing trousers. This is not a debate. It is a fact arranged into a dress code and typed onto district letterhead, and it has approximately the same weight as a natural law in your school building. You could raise the issue with the principal. The principal has a filing system. Your objection would be in it by Friday, under a category that does not help you. Let's talk about the hallway. It smells of chalk dust, floor wax, and whatever the cafeteria has decided is soup today. The radiators along the wall knock at irregular intervals like someone sending a message in a code nobody has ever bothered to decipher. The linoleum is the colour of a decision made in 1947. Your crinoline, 20 yards of netting, because yesterday 17 confirmed that volume is optimism, announces every step with a soft rustle, which means the hallway hears you before it sees you. This is, depending on who you ask, the point. A girl named Patricia adjusts her girdle strap in the space between lockers with the casual efficiency of someone who has been doing this since 13, which she has. She doesn't look up. This is not embarrassment. This is muscle memory. You pass her and your saddle shoes squeak against the wax in a way that sounds genuinely apologetic. Missus. Aldrich, the home economics teacher, has the October issue of 17 open on her desk during personal presentation week. The article is titled, "Are You the Girl He Notices?" And the answer, laid out in 6 illustrated steps, involves your posture, the angle of your chin, and the volume of your laugh. Not the laugh itself. The volume, there is a correct decibel range, bright, brief, and structurally apologetic. You are in it, or you are not, and the magazine has opinions about which one you currently are. This is, functionally, a Duolingo streak for husband acquisition. The guidance counsellor, Mr. Fenwick, has a motivational poster above his desk that says, "Your future starts now." He means it. He just has a specific future in mind. A 1961 Journal of Counseling Psychology study will eventually document what Mr. Fenwick's office already practices without documentation. Girls assessed as having marriage potential, a category partly determined by how you look, which is to say, by how well you followed the October issue, are systematically steered away from four-year colleges, not loudly, quietly, with questions like, have you thought about what's really practical for a girl with your qualities? The question hangs in the air of his office the way the cafeteria soup hangs in the hallway. Present. Specific. Not going anywhere. Your textbook for third period weighs approximately 4 pounds and smells of library binding glue and institutional ambition. Inside it, American history moves in a straight line toward progress. The women in it are exceptions, footnotes, wives of men who did things. You copy a date into your notebook and your pen runs dry and you borrow one from the boy next to you and he doesn't notice you're there, which is the wrong outcome, and you knew that before homeroom. You will know other numbers first, your locker combination, the number of stops on the bus home, the decibel range Mrs. Aldrich graded you on in October. Patricia pulls her cardigan straight in the reflection of the trophy case and walks past you towards second period, her crinoline rustling at exactly the volume the magazine recommended. You open the textbook to Chapter 4, which is titled Family Relations. The page lists 7 specific instructions for the woman who wishes to keep her husband attentive after the first year of marriage. You are 15. The instructions include retouching makeup before he comes home, removing children from his immediate sightline for the first 20 minutes after his arrival, and never raising the household budget within the first hour. Your teacher reads them aloud in order. There are 42 minutes left in the period. Home economics is everywhere. By the mid-1950s, approximately 90% of American high schools offer it. Not as an elective, not as a club, as a course with a textbook, a grade, and a teacher who has a degree in this, from a university, which she attended instead of getting married at 20, which is a biographical detail nobody mentions aloud. The classroom smells like institutional cooking and fabric sizing, and something faintly chemical from the sewing machines in the back row. The smell is specific. Not bad, not good, just unavoidably there, the way a decision is unavoidably there once it's been made for you. The American Home Economics Association has over 100,000 members by 1955. There is an association, it has members. They have annual conferences where they discuss Chapter 4. Your teacher is Mrs. Albrecht. She stands at the front of the room with a posture that suggests she has been corrected about posture before and has corrected other people about posture ever since. She reads the Good Wife's Guide instructions without emphasis, the way you'd read a bus schedule. Ribbon in the hair before he arrives. Children managed. Tone adjusted. Missus. Albrecht does not say where the children go during the first 20 minutes. The textbook doesn't specify either. They just need to not be there. Mrs. Albrecht turns the page in the textbook with the flat of her thumb, smoothing the fold open against the desk. She reads instruction 5 aloud, about meeting your husband at the door, and underlines it on the master copy with a small pencil mark you can see from the 3rd row. You take notes. The notes go in a binder. The binder goes home and lives on the small shelf above your desk between the algebra workbook and your mother's copy of Time's Joy of Cooking. The cooking unit teaches you to make a casserole. The sewing unit teaches you to hem a skirt. The child development unit assigns you a flour sack baby, small, dense, and easily resentful, which you are responsible for not dropping for 2 weeks. The flour sack doesn't drop, you pass. The family relations unit teaches you what mood the house should be in when a man walks into it after work. A girl named Connie in the 3rd row is taking notes with a fountain pen, pressing hard enough that the page shows through. She got the highest score in the county on the state math exam in October. She hasn't told anyone this. The counsellor who saw the result did not mention it to her parents. The family relations unit does not have a chapter on county math exams. The textbook isn't the only instruction. 17 magazine covers laugh volume. Mrs. Albrecht covers dinner timing. Dr. Spock's book, 500,000 copies in its first year, covers what happens after the wedding when the children arrive, and why your presence at home is not a preference but a developmental necessity. Eric Erikson, who has a faculty position at Harvard and a 1950 hardcover, writes that a woman's identity belongs to the room you are currently sitting in. He uses more clinical phrasing. The room is the same room. Connie, in the 3rd row, gets done with her notes early and uses the remaining minutes to work through a quadratic on the back of her recipe card. She covers it with her hand when Mrs. Albrecht walks past. Mrs. Albrecht walks past. Connie uncovers the quadratic, finishes it, and slides the recipe card back into the binder facing up. 38 minutes left. Mrs. Albrecht moves to the cooking demonstration at the front counter. The lesson is beef stroganoff, timed to be ready at 6:15. You copy the recipe. The paper smells like the mimeograph machine and something faintly of floor wax. Connie caps her fountain pen and puts it in her blazer pocket, where it leaves a small ink mark she won't notice until she gets home. She'll be married by 22. She'll be fine, probably. The flour sack passed. You stand at the cosmetics counter at Woolworth's after school with 85 cents in your purse. The clerk knows your name. She has known your name since you were 11, because she has been selling you cosmetics. First powder, then colour stick, then Tangy Natural, since before you needed any of it. The lipstick is 25 cents. The pressed compact, which you do not strictly need, is another 50 cents you do not have today. You buy the lipstick. The cosmetics industry grew from $400 million in 1940 to over $1.2 billion by 1955. That number includes you. It includes your 85 cents and your mother's cold cream and the Coty face powder your older sister keeps on the back of the toilet tank. Max Factor's Pancake Foundation, the one in the square orange compact, is being marketed to girls your age. You are 12. The ad doesn't say 12. It says fresh-faced and ready, which in 1955 means the same thing. Tangy Natural is peachy beige in the tube and goes on nearly invisible. That's the point. The cosmetics aren't meant to be seen. They're meant to be present. A girl who wears no makeup at all reads as careless. A girl who wears too much reads as something worse, a word the adults use in a low voice. The acceptable register is narrow and requires practice. You're practicing. 17 magazine launched in 1944 and hit 1 million subscribers by 1949. It is bright, cheerful, and quietly prescriptive. You read it on the bus. There are articles about sweaters and articles about boys, and occasionally an article that is technically about sweaters but is actually about boys. The advice is specific. Tilt your head slightly when he's talking. Don't laugh too loudly. Let him explain things you already know. The advice does not say, pretend to be less intelligent, because it doesn't need to say it. A 1957 study at Barnard College asked female students directly, Over half admitted they had deliberately hidden their academic ability from male peers they wanted to attract. Not occasionally, regularly, as strategy. The study's author, Mira Komorowski, reported this without apparent surprise, because by 1957 it wasn't surprising. It was coursework, unscheduled. Margaret, the girl behind you in line at the Woolworths counter, the one with the Aquanet smell coming off her hair like a chemical weather system, has a 94 average in chemistry. Her lab partner doesn't know this. He's told her his grade 3 times and she's said wow each time with the same expression, a smile that starts in the eyes and stops just before it becomes a laugh. She has practiced the smile. It took a while to get the stop right. Aquanet itself costs 39 cents and smells the way a hardware store smells, except the hardware store is aimed at your skull. The hairspray, the powder, the lipstick, the girdle fastened before school with your mother holding the hooks, all of it is a daily practice run for something the magazines call your future. The girdle is for girls as young as 13. The netting in a good crinoline petticoat runs 20 yards. 20 yards. It rustles when you walk. The hallway announces you before you arrive. None of this is framed as constraint. It's framed as preparation. The compact, the lipstick, the carefully calibrated laugh, these are described as tools, and in a practical sense they are. A girl who masters the register attracts attention. Attention leads to dates. Dates lead to a ring by senior year, which is the timeline. The cosmetics counter at Woolworths is, in its way, the first classroom of the day. You are 16 and you have not been pinned by a steady boyfriend, which is approximately 3 months late by your school's calendar. The class advisor mentions it during the homecoming court nomination meeting. She does not phrase it as a question. She mentions it the way a doctor mentions a delayed milestone, concerned, professional, with the quiet expectation of follow-up. The other girls on the committee adjust their hands in their laps. The meeting continues to the next agenda item. Let's talk about the pin. It's not a pin, it's a clock. A boys' fraternity pin or class ring worn on your sweater means you are accounted for, which is the social equivalent of a zoning permit, proof that the lot is occupied and development is proceeding on schedule. Without it, you are unimproved property. The hallway knows. The lunch table knows. Your homeroom teacher doesn't say anything, but she notices, the way she notices when a desk is still empty in November. The terminology has its own hierarchy. Going steady is stage 1, pinned is stage 2, engaged is stage 3. Each stage has a timeline. The timeline is not written anywhere. It exists the way the dress code exists, enforced without documentation, familiar to everyone, understood on arrival. A girl who moves through the stages too slowly is cause for concern. A girl who doesn't move at all is a cautionary topic at the lunch table, discussed in the same low, careful register as a diagnosis. Donna Reisner sits 2 rows ahead of you in civics. She is 17, academically the strongest student in the room, and has been going steady with the same boy since the spring formal. She answers fewer questions in class now. Not all of them, just the hard ones. She lets the answer sit in her throat for a moment, then looks at the desk instead. You have watched her do this so many times you could chart it. Question appears, answer surfaces, hand stays down. The grade she is most careful about is the one she could win. Mira Komorowski, a sociologist at Barnard, surveys her own students in 1957 and writes down what your hallway already knows. Over half of them tell her plainly that they perform below their ability on dates and in mixed company, quiet, deferential, and reliably impressed. They know the rules. They knew the rules at 15. Komorowski just wrote them out in academic font. Of course, the social pressure has institutional backup. Your guidance counsellor, Mr. Pemberton, keeps a stack of brochures on his desk, secretarial programs, nursing certificates, 2-year colleges. He hands them out with the mild authority of someone who has already done the math on your behalf. If you mention medicine or law, he nods in the way that means he has heard this before and knows how it ends. The 1961 Journal of Counseling Psychology found counselors at schools across the country systematically steered girls with what they called marriage potential away from 4-year universities. Marriage potential was, in part, determined by how you looked. The brochure stack makes more sense in that light. The old maid stigma does the remaining work. She is invoked like a weather system, not by name but by implication. Too selective, too focused on school, ends up alone. You hear it from your mother, your aunt, the woman who runs the church social committee, the the columnist in 17 who phrases it more gently but means the same thing. Alone. The word arrives at the end of a sentence and stops the room. Donna Reisner will marry her steady on a Saturday in June, 10 months after graduation, in a Methodist church in Worcester. Her chemistry teacher will not be invited. He sent her name to a regional scholarship committee in November, and the letter arrived at the house, and her father opened it, and the letter ended up in a drawer. The meeting ended. The homecoming agenda moved on. You adjusted your hands in your lap, the same as everyone else. The pin question didn't come back. It didn't have to. You finished the algebra test with 7 minutes remaining. Your boyfriend, who has been sweating through his own copy across the aisle, has roughly half the problems left. You look at your paper. You look at his paper. You erase 3 of your correct answers and write in the wrong ones. He gets a B- on Friday. You get a C+ on Friday. Neither of you mentions it at lunch on Monday. You did this last month on the chemistry quiz. You did it in November on the geometry final. Mira Komarovsky's 1957 Barnard study collects this exact gesture from over half her respondents, who report flat, undefensive, mildly bored, that they perform below their ability on dates and in mixed company as a matter of routine practice. The strategy isn't subtle. You learned it at 12. Math is the cleanest subject to do it in. Math is legible. A score is a score. You can't soften a correct answer or make it seem less threatening by tilting your head while you write it. The number is either right or it isn't, which means math is the subject where the performance gap is hardest to fake gradually, and so you don't fake it gradually. You erase it cleanly. 3 answers. 7 minutes. The whole transaction takes less time than it takes your boyfriend to finish the page. A guidance counselor named Mrs. Hartley, not Mr. Pemberton's department, different hallway, same building, keeps a file on every girl in the junior class. The file notes grade point average, extracurricular participation, and a column she labels social adjustment. A girl with straight A's in chemistry and no steady boyfriend by spring semester gets a note in the social adjustment column. It is not a compliment. By fall, she has been quietly redirected toward the school paper, which involves more boys and fewer equations. Mrs. Hartley slides Linda's file back into the drawer. Linda has straight A's in chemistry, no steady, and a note in the social adjustment column you cannot read from your side of the desk, but you can guess. By fall, Linda has been reassigned from advanced biology to the school paper, where she will write 3 articles about the prom and 1 about the Future Homemakers of America chapter and her A. Average will quietly become a B+ average, and nobody will mention this because it doesn't need mentioning. You know how this ends. Yale won't admit women undergraduates until 1969. Princeton won't either. What remains is the coeducational campus, where the same calculus applies in larger rooms with worse coffee. A girl who outperforms her male classmates in visible ways, grades posted publicly, class participation, debate, is described as a lot, too much. The kind of girl who might have opinions at breakfast for the rest of his life. So you develop a different skill set. 17 magazine has been publishing the curriculum since 1944. How to listen with your whole body tilted slightly forward. How to ask questions that let him talk for longer. How to laugh at a volume that reads as delighted rather than competitive. You practice in the bathroom mirror on Sunday afternoons with the door closed. You get good at it. Being good at it is invisible, which is precisely the point. The algebra test goes back in your binder. The wrong answers stay wrong. Your boyfriend folds his B- into his back pocket on Friday and shows it to you at the lunch table. You smile the small particular smile that starts in the eyes and stops just before it becomes a laugh. You open the November issue of 17 on your bedroom floor and turn to page 42, which lists 6 rules for the position of your body during a conversation with a boy. Tilt your head slightly when he speaks. Keep your knees together. Laugh at his observations, but not at your own. Ask 3 questions about his interests before offering one of yours. The article is structured as a checklist with little numbered boxes you are encouraged to memorize. You memorize them. 17 launched in 1944 and hit 1 million readers by 1949. The November issue runs 68 pages. Page 42 is where the rules live. The other 67 pages cover cashmere sweaters, lipstick reviews, and what your room should smell like when a boy walks in. You read all 68 on the bus. The advice itself is very specific. Not be pleasant. Not Show interest. Page counts and numbered boxes and the phrase, "he will notice." Notice what? The angle of your chin, the steadiness of your gaze, whether your knees drift apart when you sit on a bleacher. The magazine has strong, particular, slightly haunted opinions about bleachers. A girl named Ruthann sits across from you in homeroom with her own copy, its spine already creased from rereading. She's underlined "your posture communicates your availability" in red ballpoint. She hasn't underlined it because she agrees. She's underlined it because it will be on the social exam on Friday, which is to say at the game, which is to say every Friday indefinitely. Ruthann holds her shoulders back in a way that looks natural and is not natural. She has been practicing since October. The posture rules are not fringe content. They sit between a feature on cashmere sweaters and a quiz about your personality type, which has 4 outcomes and 3 of them are variations of "you would make a wonderful wife." The 4th outcome is "consider being more approachable." The magazine doesn't elaborate on what happens if you're not. It doesn't need to. Ruthann also keeps a Mademoiselle in her locker and a Glamour at home, both folded to specific pages. Mademoiselle recommends letting a boy finish a sentence even when you knew where it was going 30 seconds ago. Glamour suggests that correcting a factual error in mixed company is, and this is a direct quote in spirit if not in letter, a choice with consequences. Ruthann has not corrected a factual error in mixed company since the Eisenhower administration. She is 15. The cosmetics section of the same November issue advertises Max Factor Pancake Foundation to readers as young as 12. 12. The ad doesn't frame this as unusual. It frames it as preparation. For what, exactly, is not stated. The ad assumes you know. You do know. You've known since the guidance office and the home economics classroom and the little numbered boxes on page 42. Tilt your head. Keep your knees together. Ask before you offer. You are wearing 20 yards of netting under your skirt right now, and the crinoline rustles every time you shift your weight on the linoleum. You can't slouch. The skirt won't let you. The magazine is aware of this. The magazine approves. You sit across from Mrs. Hennessy in a small office on the 2nd floor, and she opens your file and asks what colleges you are considering. You say Smith. She closes the file. She has not opened it on the page that lists your grades. She has opened it on the page that lists your physical description and your dating history, neither of which you knew were in the file. The conversation that follows is short. By the end of it, the conversation has moved to nursing school as a more practical option. Mrs. Hennessy isn't unusual. The 1961 Journal of Counseling Psychology will, in 5 years, publish a study describing what she's doing right now across the country. Counselors steering girls with what they called marriage potential toward off-ramp careers. Marriage potential includes how you look. Your grades aren't the variable, your cheekbones are. Practical, in this room, has a specific meaning. Practical means nursing, teaching, or secretarial work, quiet, portable, and easily set down when a man proposes. Mrs. Hennessy has made this calculation on your behalf in the time it took to flip one page in a folder. The folder doesn't flip back. Mrs. Hennessy picks up a brochure from the left side of her desk. It has a photograph of a woman in a white uniform on the cover. The woman is smiling at something outside the frame, possibly a husband. Mrs. Hennessy slides it across the desk with the practiced gesture of someone who has done this so many times that her wrist doesn't bother asking her brain anymore. The math is sitting on the desk between you. In 1955, the median annual income for a working woman is $2,719. For a man, $4,252. Your neighbor's husband, the one with the new Buick, clears $5,000 at the Ford plant with overtime. Mrs. Hennessy doesn't say these numbers. She doesn't have to. They are inside the brochure on her desk in the form of a smiling nurse who knows where her next mortgage is coming from. Until 1974, a bank can legally refuse to issue you a credit card without a husband's co-signature. A mortgage works the same way. So does the apartment lease at the new complex on Maple. Mrs. Hennessy taps the brochure once, sets her pen down, and waits. Of course, there are schools that might take you seriously. Smith would, Vassar would, but Yale won't. Not until 1969. Princeton won't either. Harvard won't fully integrate Radcliffe until 1977, which means the words Harvard degree will appear on a man's diploma for 2 more decades before they appear on yours. The doors that are open to a specific width. You can measure it with your shoulders. Mrs. Hennessy closes your folder. She says you're a bright girl. The word bright in her mouth sounds neat, polished, and slightly disappointed, the way a teacher says it about a vase she's just decided you can have. The brochure is still on the desk in front of you. The woman on the cover is still smiling at the husband outside the frame. You pick up the brochure. It's printed on glossy paper and it smells faintly of the same ink as your textbooks. Institutional, settled, not designed to be questioned. Mrs. Hennessy writes something in your file. You don't see what it says. The file closes again. It has the solid, unambiguous sound of something that has made up its mind. You enroll at Wellesley in the fall of 1955 with a stated major in art history and an unstated major in matrimonial logistics. The unstated major is the larger of the two. Roughly 60% of the girls in your dorm have named finding a husband as a primary reason for attending. Although the official admissions essay you wrote 3 months ago described your interest in early Italian Renaissance fresco technique, both reasons are true. Both reasons are also operational. Wellesley is a women's college, which means the husband procurement operation requires a separate satellite campus. Harvard is 45 minutes away by train. MIT is 30 minutes. The train schedule is not academic infrastructure. It is social infrastructure. You know the 8:15 departure the way you know your own shoe size, without having to think about it, and with some urgency. The Wellesley social calendar runs on a parallel track to the academic calendar, and it is careful, precise, and slightly conspiratorial, more closely managed than the academic one. There are mixers. There are teas. There are formal dinners where the seating arrangements have been adjusted with the seriousness of a State Department briefing. A junior named Patricia Chen moves through the common room with a clipboard and a pencil tucked behind her ear, quietly redistributing RSVPs like a logistics coordinator for an operation that has no official name but very clear objectives. The curriculum cooperates. Your art history professor is brilliant, and your art history seminar is genuinely engaging, and none of this is the point. A 1961 Journal of Counseling Psychology study, not yet published but very much already true in 1955, you will find that guidance counselors across the country are steering girls with marriage potential away from professional ambitions. The girls who made it to Wellesley dodged that particular redirect, but the redirect didn't disappear. It just got a better wardrobe. The Barnard study of 1957 finds something you could have told them without the survey. Female students regularly pretend to be less intelligent than they are, so that male peers will find them attractive. At Wellesley, this is a practiced art. You know how to answer a question at 3/4 volume, with a small pause before the answer that makes the answer seem like a discovery rather than a certainty. You didn't learn this from a textbook. You learned it the way you learned to walk, from watching everyone around you do it until it became automatic. The 17 framework is useful here. The magazine has been publishing monthly instructions since 1944 on laugh, volume, conversational strategy, and the correct angle at which to tilt your head when a boy is explaining something to you. 1 million subscribers by 1949. You read it on the train down to Harvard, with your copy folded back at the dating column, the same way the girls across the aisle have theirs folded back at the dating column. Patricia Chen adjusts the RSVP list at the common room table with the focused competence she will later apply to a career she hasn't been told is available to her yet. She caps her pen with her thumb. She uncaps it again. Patricia keeps a running tally in the back of her calendar. Not in numbers, in initials. Each initial is a boy from a specific dorm, with a specific major and a specific best guess at his postgraduate income trajectory. The whole arrangement is basically a LinkedIn dashboard 50 years early, except the analytics run on handwritten marginalia and the hiring committee is your own mother. She wrote it in pencil. She updates it with the steady, undefensive efficiency of someone who has been keeping a ledger since she was 14. Nobody else sees the page. She doesn't show it to her roommate. She doesn't show it to you. Right now, it's just a schedule. The train to Cambridge at 8:15. The mixer. Patricia with her clipboard. The art history seminar at 9 on Monday, which you are genuinely interested in, and the Harvard formal on Saturday, which you are also genuinely interested in, and the question of which one is the point. Both are the point. Patricia would tell you that, if you asked. Patricia would tell you both things are always simultaneously the point, and she would do it without looking up from the RSVP list. You board a chartered bus on a Saturday afternoon in October and ride for 2 hours and 40 minutes to a mixer at a residential college in New Haven. The bus is full. Every girl on it has been instructed by her house mother in the proper conduct of a mixer, including the rule that one does not accept more than 2 drinks from the same boy in a single evening. The instructions are not framed as advice. They are framed as the syllabus. Yale doesn't admit women as undergraduates. Not in 1955, not in 1960, not until 1969, at which point the median female marriage age has already started climbing back towards something less historically unprecedented. Tonight, though, you are a guest. The residential college has invited a women's college up from the city, and the residential college has cleaned its common room, and someone has put out a bowl of punch that is doing its best. The skirt has 3 petticoats under it, which together contain approximately 16 yards of netting. The netting rustles when you walk. It announces you to every room before you arrive, which is either glamorous or deeply inconvenient depending on whether you are hoping to make an entrance or simply find the bathroom without commentary. Your girdle is a separate issue. It arrived in your life at 13 and has not left. A girl named Carol adjusts her collar in the bus window, using it as a mirror with the focused calm of someone diffusing something. She's done this before. She knows the window tilts right and compensates. When the bus pulls up outside the gate, she caps her lipstick, tangy natural, waxy and faintly orange, drops it into her clutch, and stands before the bus has fully stopped. She's not nervous. She's prepared. Those are different things, and Carol knows which one works. A boy named Hollis in a navy blazer hands you a glass of punch with both hands, the way a deacon hands you a hymnal. He is studying economics. He says so within 45 seconds. He is 3 years from a job, a GI-adjacent mortgage, and a starter house off the New Haven Railroad line, and he doesn't say any of that because he doesn't have to. The punch bowl on the table behind him is gently sweating in the warm common room. The borrowed furniture is, depending on the angle, either gracious or slightly resigned. The Komorowski data is in the room with you, unnamed. Over 60% of female students at major co-ed universities cite husband finding as a primary reason for attending college. You're not at a co-ed university, you're visiting one. The math is the same. Your 4-year degree, postgraduate, will not entitle you to a credit card in your own name. Hollis's degree will. He pours you another half cup of punch without asking. You find someone to talk to near the window. He's studying economics. You are also studying economics, but you mention it briefly and then ask him something about himself, which is what 17 magazine recommended in its February issue, the one with the article about conversational strategy that read less like dating advice and more like a field manual for a very specific kind of undercover work. Tilt your head slightly, ask the question, wait. The magazine had diagrams. Not literal diagrams, but close. Your house mother, Mrs. Calloway, ran through the rules in her sitting room on Thursday with the floral upholstery and the small dish of butterscotch candies. 2 drinks maximum from 1 boy. No leaving the residential college grounds. Be on the bus by 10:55. Mrs. Calloway did not say what would happen if you weren't on the bus by 10:55. She did not have to. Her tone did the work, calm, level, and quietly thorough. And you wrote nothing down because writing it down would have implied you needed to. The bus leaves at 11. Carol is back in her seat by 10:58, lipstick retouched, with a name and a college house written on the inside cover of her program. She doesn't show anyone. She folds it twice and puts it in her clutch next to the tangy. Outside, New Haven passes in the dark, and the bus smells like Aquanet and someone's white shoulders perfume and the specific diesel warmth of a trip that accomplished what it was supposed to. You wear the pin he gave you on Monday morning to confirm that the situation has progressed from casual to formal. The pin is small, made of his fraternity's metal, and worn over the left breast pocket of your cardigan. By Wednesday, 3 other girls have congratulated you, 2 have asked for specific details, and 1 has stopped speaking to you because her own pin did not come last month. The hierarchy of pin status is well known to everyone at your lunch table. Dorothy at the far end of the table tracks the progress of every girl in the senior class on the inside cover of her chemistry notebook, neat, alphabetized, and only mildly competitive, with a column for each stage and a date next to each entry. The lavalier at her own throat catches the fluorescent light every time she reaches for her milk. Dorothy at the far end of the table has been lavaliered since October. She carries this fact with the composure of someone who has already solved the primary problem and is now working on secondary concerns, like whether to transfer to a school closer to him. She doesn't say this out loud. She doesn't need to. The lavalier says it for her, catching the fluorescent light every time she reaches for her milk. You've been pinned for 4 days. This is new territory. You don't mention him too much. 17 ran a piece in November about the dangers of over-mentioning, which creates the impression of desperation, which is the social equivalent of a structural crack in a load-bearing wall. You mention him the correct amount. You've practiced this. Margaret, 2 seats down, is pre-med. She doesn't say this at mixers. She says she's interested in nursing, which is technically adjacent and socially approved, and which doesn't produce the particular silence that medical school produces in a room where the goal is a pin. Margaret reads Grey's Anatomy under her bedspread with a flashlight. Her roommate thinks she's reading the new Doris Day biography. Margaret has not corrected the impression. The pin itself is a small piece of stamped metal with a Greek letter on it. It sits on your cardigan, catching the fluorescent light every time you reach across the lunch table for the salt. The engagement ring, when it comes, operates differently. The pin is a claim. The ring is a resolution. The ring ends the primary social anxiety of your adolescence, the anxiety that has been running since approximately 8th grade, when the first girl in your class started going steady and the rest of you recalibrated your timelines accordingly. Dorothy's ring will arrive in March. Margaret's ring will arrive a year later, in a small box left on her dresser by a boy she met in the chemistry library who did not know about Grey's Anatomy. What happens after the ring is a different chapter. A Levittown kitchen facing a backyard, a Spock paperback on the nightstand, a percolator running at 7 a.m., a Milltown bottle next to it, appearing sometime around year 3, refilled monthly without comment, but that's not this Monday. This Monday you have the pin, and Dorothy has the lavalier, and Linda is walking to class without either. Linda is sitting in the library on Tuesday afternoon reading a brochure for the secretarial program that Mrs. Hennessy slid across the desk last spring. The brochure is on glossy paper. It does not have her name on it. Not yet. You're 17. You're ahead of schedule by the lunch table's count, and the lunch table's count is the count that matters this week. You open the cedar chest at the foot of your bed and add the new tea towels your aunt sent for your 16th birthday. The chest now contains 11 embroidered pillowcases, 6 sets of monogrammed napkins, 3 dish towels, a quilt your grandmother began for you when you were 9, and a small silver pickle fork. The chest is for your future home. You do not yet know who you will be sharing the future home with. You will continue adding to it for the next 4 years. The cedar chest is not a new idea. Generations of women before you kept one, called a hope chest or a glory box depending on which grandmother is telling the story. What's new is the scale. By the mid-1950s, Lane's Cedar Chest Company has turned the tradition into a full retail category, advertised directly in 17 magazine with copy that tells you, plainly, that a girl who isn't building her chest isn't building her future. The chest has a price tag. The future has a deadline. Both are mentioned in the same breath. Your mother started her own chest at 14. Her mother started at 12. You are 16, which means you are, technically, running a little behind. Nobody says this out loud. The chest says it for them. The chest is also a curriculum. Not just the towels and the pillowcases, those are obvious. You embroider the napkins yourself, in home economics, during the unit titled Household Textiles and Their Care. The stitching is graded. Mrs. Halverson, who wears her reading glasses on a chain and taps the desk with one finger when your tension is uneven, holds your work up to the fluorescent light and tips it slightly, like she's reading tea leaves. She sets it back down without comment. You restitch the border over lunch. The home economics room smells like sizing spray, institutional gas burners, and the faint chemical sweetness of library paste. Mrs. Halverson runs the room with the steady, slightly bored, mildly territorial competence of a woman who has taught this unit since 1947. 90% of American high schools offer the class. The American Home Economics Association has over 100,000 members. Mrs. Halverson is one of them. Her membership card lives in her wallet behind a photograph of her late husband and a coupon for Pillsbury flour that expired in 1953. The napkins are only part of it. The Family Relations Unit, which is what the curriculum calls the portion dedicated to courtship, marriage, and household management, covers topics your math class doesn't touch. How to set a formal table. How to plan a week of meals on a budget. How to keep a husband interested in coming home. That last one is framed as household atmosphere, which is a very tidy way to describe it. The 1955 Good Wife's Guide, circulated through church groups and school resource packets, is more direct. Have dinner ready, retouch your lipstick, put a ribbon in your hair. The ribbon is load-bearing in that sentence. It is doing real work. Your cousin Patrice already has her chest half full and she's only 15. She got a fondue set from her parents for Christmas, which she nested in tissue paper and placed on the top layer like a reliquary. Patrice treats the chest the way other people treat a savings account: regular deposits, careful inventory, growing interest. The interest, in this case, is marital. The chest itself is cedar because cedar repels moths. Your linens will be preserved. Your pillowcases will emerge, years from now, smelling of wood and waiting, into a house you don't live in yet, in a town you may not have visited, next to a man whose name you don't know. The cedar is very good at its job. It repels everything except time. You are 16, Patrice is 15. Your mother walks past the bed at 6 in the evening with a basket of clean laundry, glances at the open chest, sees the new tea towels folded on top of the pickle fork, and walks on without comment. The lid stays open. You close it before dinner. You write to Betty Crocker on the second Saturday of the month because your mother is worried about your meringue. The letter is 3 paragraphs long, neatly printed and addressed to a person who is not real. Betty Crocker is a corporate persona created in 1921 by General Mills and given a face by an illustrator. By 1956, she receives 4,000 letters a week. The reply will arrive on official Betty Crocker stationery in roughly 9 days. The stationery smells faintly of ink and something powdery, like a department store counter. Your mother reads the reply at the kitchen table with the focus she usually reserves for the church bulletin. Betty recommends a drier bowl, a slower fold, and more patience with the oven door. Betty does not recommend a career. Betty has never recommended a career. Betty does not know what a career is, technically, because Betty is a photograph of a woman painted from a committee's idea of trustworthiness. And yet 4,000 women a week are writing to her anyway. About meringue. About pot roast. About whether a husband who doesn't comment on dinner is expressing dissatisfaction or just chewing. Betty answers all of them. Every letter goes out on the same cream-coloured stationery, with the same neat illustrator's signature at the bottom, addressed to women who believe they have just heard back from a friend. The Betty Crocker test kitchen, for the record, is real. In Minneapolis, there are 48 women on staff in white aprons and small white caps, working in identical kitchens with identical ranges, testing recipes and signing reply letters under a name that belongs to nobody. One of them, Eleanor Schuler, 34, trained as a chemist before she got married, answers your meringue letter on a Tuesday afternoon between 2 and 4. She drinks black coffee while she writes. She caps her pen between sentences. The letter that arrives at your mother's table 9 days later is in Eleanor's handwriting, signed Betty. Now consider your neighbour Mrs. Paulette Briggs, who has been writing to Betty Crocker since 1951. She keeps the replies in a shoebox under the sewing table, organised by year. She sets the box on the counter when she bakes, not to reference the letters, just to have company. Paulette tilts her head slightly when she reads each reply, the way you tilt toward a person when they're telling you something important. The letters are not from a person. Paulette knows this. She writes again in October. Your older sister Marilyn lines up the morning arsenal on the bathroom counter at 6:45, Max Factor Pancake Foundation in the square orange compact, marketed to girls as young as 12, Coty powder in a school bag compact, Tanguy Natural in waxy beige, Aquanet with the chemical sharpness of insecticide with aspirations. She applies them in order: foundation, powder, lipstick, hair. The whole arsenal takes 9 minutes. She does it the same way she does her math homework. Focused, efficient, mildly resentful. Television entered 64% of American homes by 1955. Father Knows Best premiered that same year. You watch it at 7 on Wednesdays with your mother on the couch and your father in the armchair, and Robert Young walks into a fictional living room and removes his hat. Your mother takes a Milltown with her 7:15 coffee. The bottle is brown and practical and lives next to the percolator. 36 million Milltown prescriptions by 1957, written disproportionately for women, 25 to 40. Eleanor Schuler in Minneapolis takes one too. She doesn't sign the bottle. You sit on the carpet at 7:30 on a Wednesday evening while your father adjusts the antenna and the picture stops rolling, and Robert Young walks into the living room of a fictional house in a fictional Midwestern town and removes his hat. The show is Father Knows Best. You have seen this episode. You watch it again. The mother in the show wears pearls while vacuuming. Your own mother does not wear pearls while vacuuming, although she does wear an apron. The mother in the show is named Margaret. She has a soft voice and no visible opinions about foreign policy. When Jim comes home, she is already there, composed, pleasant, dinner adjacent. She does not have a job. She does not want a job. If she ever wanted a job, the episode would be about why that was a mistake, and Jim would sort it out by the final commercial break, and everybody would laugh, and the credits would roll, and that would be the correct ending. You are 11, maybe 12. This is not presented to you as a lesson. It's just television. It's just what families are like. The distinction between those two things is not one you've been asked to make. The lineup is consistent, cheerful, and faintly hypnotic. Father Knows Best airs Tuesday and Wednesday nights on CBS. Leave It to Beaver is Thursday on ABC. Ozzie and Harriet runs on Wednesday as well. Each show contains one household. Each household contains one father who earns money, one mother who manages the interior, and children with manageable problems. The fathers are affable, the mothers are patient. Nobody has a second mortgage or a drinking problem that the camera acknowledges. The set is so clean it functions less like a room and more like a proposal. By 1955, 64% of American homes have a television. In 1950, that number was 9%. The box arrived fast. It moved into the living room and became the largest object in it, which is a thing that happens with furniture that also happens to have opinions. Margaret Anderson, the fictional mother, wears a shirtwaist dress with a full skirt and a nipped waist that requires, in real life, a girdle to maintain. The dress doesn't look like labour. That's the point. Your mother's friend Doris watches the show every week and has mentioned Margaret's kitchen twice in a single conversation, both times with a tone that wasn't quite admiration and wasn't quite longing and was probably somewhere between the two that doesn't have a name yet. Nowhere in the episode does Margaret mention that her median-aged counterpart in real-world 1956, married at 21, had her first child within 18 months, and is statistically unlikely to have finished a 4-year degree. The show doesn't say that. The show doesn't need to say that. The show is the saying. Your older sister Carol is 16 and has strong opinions about Robert Young specifically, which she does not share at full volume because that's not how it's done. She watches Margaret set a plate in front of Jim and tilts her head very slightly, the same tilt 17 magazine illustrated in the October issue under the heading, How to Show You're Listening. Carol does not know she's doing it. The magazine was very thorough. The credits roll. Your father says something about the news. Your mother gets up. The kitchen light is already on. You sit in a small basement classroom on a folding chair and listen to Mrs. Wilkins read the assigned passage on the proper role of a Christian wife. The passage is from Ephesians, but the supplementary lesson plan is from a 1953 study guide published by the National Council of Churches, which lists 31 practical applications of biblical wifely submission to the modern household. Mrs. Wilkins reads them in order. The list takes most of the hour. Application 14 is about tone of voice. Application 19 is about not contradicting your husband in front of guests. Application 26 is about the spiritual significance of a well-kept kitchen. Mrs. Wilkins pauses after 26 and looks up from the paper, because 26 is her favourite. She taps the page with one finger, the way you tap something you've personally verified. By the mid-1950s, roughly 2/3 of American families have a formal religious affiliation, and Sunday school attendance for teenagers is close to its post-war peak. Protestant, Catholic, Baptist, the theology varies. The domestic instruction doesn't. You get Ephesians in the Methodist basement. You get it in the Catholic youth group on Thursday evening. Your cousin Doreen gets a version of it in the Church of Christ pamphlet her mother sets on her nightstand without comment. Neat, square, and faintly antiseptic, the way you'd set a vitamin. The Catholic version is more structured. Your obligations to future husband and future children are ranked and cross-referenced with an efficiency that would impress a tax attorney. The Protestant version tends toward warmth. It frames submission as a spiritual gift you offer, freely, from a full heart, which is a slightly different angle on the same furniture arrangement. Both versions arrive at the same address. You are the heart of the home. The home needs a heart. You are it. This isn't up for discussion because it isn't a discussion. It's a lesson. And Mrs. Wilkins is already on application 27. Mrs. Wilkins moves on to application 28, which is about prayer at the dinner table. Her wedding ring is 2 sizes too large since the cancer. She rotates it idly with her thumb while she reads, then stops when she notices, then resumes. The class takes notes. A girl in the front row has underlined, "The kitchen is the altar of the home" in the photocopied handout in red pencil. Mrs. Wilkins watches her do it and gives the smallest, faintest, faintly pleased nod. Mrs. Wilkins closes the study guide and folds her hands. She has taught this class for 11 years. She taught it to your older sister. She will teach it, she mentions, until her hands give out. She says this without drama, as a simple fact about the future. A girl in the back row is copying the application numbers into her notebook, neat and evenly spaced, the handwriting of someone who plans to keep the notes. The church basement isn't doing this in isolation. The television is running the same lesson in the living room on Wednesday nights. The magazine is running it on the rack at the drugstore. The home economics classroom is running it third period on Tuesdays. By the time you're 16, the message has arrived from your mother, your pastor, your teacher, your favorite sitcom, a publication aimed specifically at you, and a woman named Betty who writes back with recipes and a warmth that feels entirely personal. You have not, in the strict sense, been argued with. You have been agreed with from 7 different angles since 4th grade. Application 31 is about gratitude. You write it down. The folding chair creaks when you shift. Outside, the February ground is frozen solid, and the furnace in the corner ticks with the particular rhythm of something that has been doing this a long time and intends to keep going. You stand at Station 6 in the home economics kitchen, and you have 43 minutes to produce a 4-person dinner that includes a starch, a protein, a vegetable, and a dessert with at least one decorative element. The grade is based on presentation, timing, taste, table setting, and what your teacher writes on the back of the form under general feminine bearing. You do not know what general feminine bearing means in measurable terms. Nobody has ever defined it for you in measurable terms. You are graded on it anyway. The home economics kitchen smells like institutional cooking and fabric sizing, and something that might be floor wax or might be ambition slowly evaporating. There are 6 stations, each with a 2-burner range, a small oven, and a cutting board that has seen things. Your classmates are already moving. Carol at Station 2 has started her biscuits. She's calm about it. Carol is always calm about it, which is itself a kind of performance you have studied and cannot replicate. The class isn't really about cooking. 90% of American high schools offer home economics by the mid-1950s, and the curriculum covers cooking and sewing and child development, sure. But the unit folded into the back of the binder is called Family Relations, and Family Relations is flat, specific, and quietly vocational, instruction on how to attract and keep a husband. There is no salary listed because there is no salary. There is no end date listed because there is no end date. The form keeps going. Mrs. Aldrich writes on her clipboard near the window that faces the gym. She has a specific walk, heels together at the paws, clipboard angled like a shield, and she uses it now between Station 3 and Station 4, without looking up. You watch her cross the linoleum and make a private adjustment to your posture. She didn't look at you, you adjusted anyway. The clipboard has opinions and they are transmitted at distance. The casserole dish you're building has 6 components and the instructions say, garnish, thoughtfully. You have a sprig of parsley and a damp paper towel in your apron pocket because you read ahead. You read ahead at everything. This has not, so far, been an unambiguous advantage. A 1961 Journal of Counseling Psychology study, still a few years from being published, though the counselors are already practicing the findings without the paper, will confirm that girls assessed as having marriage potential are systematically steered away from 4-year college applications. Marriage potential is partly determined by physical appearance. The parsley is not going to help you with that metric, but you keep it. The dessert is a Jell-O mold. Of course it's a Jell-O mold. The decorative element is a mandarin orange suspended in the center like a small amber planet that didn't do anything wrong and doesn't deserve this. You tip the can in at the half set point, the way the worksheet specified, And now you wait for it to firm up, and you think about the table-setting rubric and whether your fork placement communicates adequate femininity or merely competent geometry. Missus. Aldrich pauses at station 4 to correct Carol's napkin fold. She does not say anything. She unfolds the napkin, refolds it into the precise lily the worksheet specified, and walks on. Carol watches her hands the entire time, the way you'd watch a magician you almost trust. The lily is small, sharp, and quietly accurate. Carol nods once when Mrs. Aldrich is 2 steps past, then goes back to her biscuits without saying anything either. 43 minutes is almost up. The protein is plated, the starch is resting. The jello mold has released from its tin with a sound like a polite, resigned sigh. You place the parsley. You step back. You straighten your apron and adopt what you hope reads, on the back of a form, as generally feminine bearing. Mrs. Aldrich approaches with the clipboard. She writes something. She moves on. You will not see what she wrote until Tuesday, and by Tuesday you'll already be in the sewing room, being assessed on something else that doesn't have a definition either. You sit in your aunt's living room while 14 women you barely know watch you open 37 gifts wrapped in white paper. The gifts include 4 toasters, 3 sets of bath towels, 2 pressure cookers, a casserole dish shaped like a duck, and a small manual on the spiritual significance of housekeeping. You are required to hold each item up, smile, identify the giver, and dictate a thank you for the secretary your aunt has appointed to keep notes. The duck casserole arrives last. You smile at the duck casserole. Aunt Helen has been planning this since October. You announced your engagement in November. The math doesn't bother her. She has a clipboard, a guest list organised by family branch, and a punch bowl that comes out once a year for exactly this. The ribbon from every gift goes onto a paper plate with a hole cut in the middle, which you will later carry down the aisle at the rehearsal as a practice bouquet. This is a thing people do. Nobody questions the practice bouquet. It's made of ribbon and the structural memory of toasters. The gift logic is straightforward, efficient, and faintly conspiratorial. 4 toasters means 3 women bought the same toaster, confirmed the purchase with no one, and wrapped it anyway. Each of them believes they have solved a problem. Each of them is right. You do not own a toaster. You won't own anything, technically, until you sign something at the county clerk's office in 6 weeks, and even then the bank will want his name first. The Equal Credit Opportunity Act is 19 years away. The toasters are the workaround. A woman named Doris, who is your future mother-in-law's college roommate and therefore occupies an obscure but load-bearing position in your social universe, hands you the spiritual housekeeping manual with both hands, like a communion wafer. She watches you read the title. The title has the word joyful in it twice. You nod slowly, the way you've been nodding since you were 14 and 17 magazine ran a piece on how to listen to a boy talk about baseball without your eyes going visibly blank. The food appears at the midpoint. Finger sandwiches with the crusts removed, a jello mold containing suspended fruit in a configuration that suggests someone's idea of optimism, and a sheet cake decorated with 2 interlocked rings in white frosting. Aunt Helen has made the jello mold herself. It trembles on the serving plate with the quiet dignity of something that knows it will not survive the afternoon. You take a cube of the orange layer. You eat it. It tastes like the colour orange decided to become a texture. Now, the photographer. He's your uncle's friend, which is why he photographs mostly weddings and occasionally livestock auctions, and he keeps asking you to lean toward the gifts. You lean toward the gifts. You lean toward the 4 toasters. You hold up the duck casserole again because the light was wrong the first time. The duck looks patient. It has been through worse. Every woman in this room has done this. Your mother sat in this exact chair, or one like it, in 1931. Aunt Helen did in 1938. Mrs. Peterson with the pressure cooker did in 1949 and still has opinions. Mrs. Peterson leans forward now and tells you, unprompted, that the pressure cooker needs the gasket replaced every 2 years and the receipt is in the box. She taps the box twice with her index finger. The box knows. You write 37 thank you notes the following Tuesday. Each one takes 4 minutes. The note for the duck casserole takes 6 because you want to be accurate about your feelings, and accuracy takes longer than gratitude. You are 19. The median marriage age for American women in your year is 20.1. And your wedding is scheduled for the 3rd Saturday in June, which is 6 months from today. The calendar above your desk has the days crossed off in small, careful pencil marks. The wedding will involve 140 guests, a 4-tier cake, 3 bridesmaids, and a reception in the Methodist church basement. The dress is being altered for the 4th time. Each alteration is a 1/4 inch. The dress has a nipped waist, padded hips, and a full skirt requiring approximately 18 yards of fabric plus a crinoline underneath that adds another 12 yards of netting. Christian Dior introduced this silhouette in 1947 and called it the new look. The department stores called it modern femininity. Your body calls it a Wednesday. The crinoline audible on linoleum, the waist cinched to a circumference your lungs regard as optimistic, the skirt wide enough to require you to turn sideways through the church door. The dress has opinions, mostly about your rib cage. The 6th alteration will happen 2 weeks before the date. A seamstress named Gloria pins the hem on her knees without looking up, holding 4 pins between her lips as she speaks, telling you the waist needs another 1/4 inch. She does not ask if you want it. The waist needs what it needs. Gloria has been doing this since 1948 and she has never once pinned a hem for a bride older than 23. You've been engaged since October, 11 months. Long enough to receive a copy of the Good Wife's Guide at your bridal shower, read it twice, underline 1 sentence, and then read it a 3rd time to determine whether the underlining was ironic or not. The guide advises you to retouch your makeup and put a ribbon in your hair before your husband arrives home. It advises you to have dinner ready. It advises you to speak in a low, soft, soothing voice. It is 4 pages long and covers more operational ground than your high school home economics final, which was itself covering the same ground but with a grading rubric. Home economics prepared you for this in the way that a fire drill prepares you for a fire. The sequence is right, the urgency is simulated. You learn to budget a household on a single income. You learn to produce a balanced meal from 3 components and a casserole. You learned family relations, which is the unit where you learned that managing a husband's comfort was a skill with a technique, teachable, gradable, demonstrable on an index card. 90% of American high schools offered this curriculum by the mid-1950s. It was the most universally attended vocational course in the country, and the vocation it trained you for paid nothing and came with no union protections. The wage gap had done its own convincing. Your starting salary at the insurance office last summer was $2,650 a year. The man 2 desks over, doing approximately the same filing, earned $4,400. Mr. Halloran on the 3rd floor cleared $5,500 at the Ford plant with overtime. Gloria, sliding the pins one at a time into the hem, has heard these numbers from every bride she's pinned for since 1948. She does not look up. She slides another pin in at the back seam and asks if you want a small handkerchief pocket added to the sash. You say yes. The calendar above your desk has 43 days left. The pencil marks are very small. Each morning you cross one off and the dress gets slightly closer, and your mother calls to check on the alteration and ask whether you've written your thank you notes for the shower gifts, because Doris is still waiting on hers and the toaster has been used twice. You write the note. You date it correctly. Your handwriting is neat because you've been practicing neat handwriting since 4th grade, which is when they told the girls it mattered. 42 days. You stand at the counter at Macy's and the saleswoman explains that to open a store credit account you will need either a father or a husband to co-sign the application. You are 20. You earn your own salary as a secretary at a regional insurance office. You are not married. Your father lives in a different state. The saleswoman is sympathetic, but the saleswoman did not write the policy. The policy was written by the bank. The bank does not negotiate. The saleswoman, her name tag says Mildred, in a font that has seen things, slides the application form across the counter so you can see the line yourself. There's a line for your name. There's a line directly under it and slightly bolded for a male co-signer. The line is mandatory. The Equal Credit Opportunity Act won't pass until 1974. Mildred has explained this to 12 women this month. She does not editorialize. The practical result is administrative, daily, and quietly relentless. You can't open a department store account. You can't apply for a mortgage on your own. In most cities, you can't lease an apartment without a male guarantor, which means your housing options are a rooming house, a relative's spare bedroom, or a husband. The rooming house has a curfew. Your aunt's spare bedroom smells like mothballs and judgment. The husband does not have a curfew. This is not a coincidence. Mildred slides a second form across the counter, taller, narrower, printed on the same pink receipt tape paper they use for in-store layaway, and you can smell the carbon copy ink from where you're standing, sharp and faintly chemical, like a school office. The cash register 2 stations down clacks twice and chimes. Your salary is $2,719 a year. Mr. Halpern at the desk next to yours, doing work largely identical to yours except he has a different title, earns $4,252. A union auto worker with overtime clears $5,500. Mr. Halpern bought a Buick last fall. He mentions the Buick at the water cooler approximately every 9 days. He never mentions his salary. He doesn't have to. Now, consider what happens if you stay unmarried and try to build something anyway. Dorothy, your co-worker, sensible shoes, excellent filing system, tried to buy a used Buick in 1953 on installment. The dealership called her father. Her father had been dead for 6 years. The dealership called her brother instead. The brother co-signed without being asked if Dorothy wanted him to. Dorothy got the Buick. The paperwork listed her brother as the responsible party. Dorothy drove that car for 9 years without incident, which the paperwork declined to record. You fold your hands on the counter. You are polite, because you are always polite, because you were told at 16 that a girl who makes a scene in public is a girl who doesn't get what she wants. The saleswoman writes down the address of the nearest branch where you can speak to a manager. The manager will explain the same policy in a slightly larger office. You thank her. You pick up your purse. The revolving door deposits you back onto 34th Street, where the city continues making no particular accommodation for your situation. You have 42 days left on the calendar above your desk. You sign the contract on a Thursday afternoon in the principal's office, and the contract contains a clause on page 3 that you read aloud to confirm you understand it. The clause requires you to resign from your teaching position within 30 days of becoming visibly pregnant. The clause is not unusual. The clause is the standard in most school districts in your state and in roughly half the districts in the country. You sign anyway. Teaching jobs in 1955 are not easy to come by. The clause doesn't say pregnancy, it says visibly pregnant. The adverb is doing considerable work. It means the termination isn't triggered by the fact itself, it's triggered by the fact becoming inconvenient to look at. You could, theoretically, teach through the first trimester. You could teach through the second, provided your wardrobe cooperated. The dress has opinions about this. The dress is doing what it can. Eventually, the dress loses the argument. Signing means losing several specific things. You lose your salary, which is not large. The median for a female teacher in 1955 runs somewhere around $3,200 a year, but it is yours, issued in your name, deposited in an account that doesn't require your husband's signature to open. You lose your classroom, which smells of chalk dust, radiator heat, and the particular institutional odor of 30 children in wool sweaters. You lose the thing that took 4 years of college to earn. The clause on page 3 is small, polite, and load-bearing. Nobody inserted it by accident. Mrs. Patricia Doyle, who teaches 7th grade English at a school in suburban Ohio, slides her copy of the contract into a manila folder without ceremony. She has already checked the folder. The folder contains her degree certificate, 2 reference letters, and a bus schedule she no longer needs. She clips the folder shut with a binder clip that resists her on the first try. The binder clip wins. She puts the folder in her desk drawer and goes back to marking compositions. Now, the clause isn't the whole story. The clause is just the part that's written down. What isn't written down is that married teachers with children are also informally discouraged from returning after the pregnancy leave ends, if the district offers leave at all, which many don't. The principal doesn't say this out loud. He doesn't have to. The substitute who took your classroom over in October has been doing a perfectly acceptable job. The principal notes this to no one in particular. The note lands where it's meant to. By the late 1950s, the teaching profession is one of the few graduate-level careers reliably open to women. Law is mostly closed. Medicine accepts roughly 5% female enrollment in most programs. Engineering schools aren't having the conversation yet. Teaching, nursing, and social work are the options that don't require a committee vote. So you take the teaching job, you sign the clause, you plan around it the way you plan around everything else, with a calendar, a contingency, and a careful silence about the timeline. The arithmetic is circular and Patricia knows it. You need the job because the wage gap makes financial independence fragile. You lose the job the moment your body confirms the marriage the school system spent 15 years steering you toward. Patricia's substitute, a Miss Holloway who graduated last June and has not yet been pregnant, will move into her classroom on Monday. The principal will introduce her with 2 sentences and a small nod. Miss Holloway will sign the same contract on Thursday afternoon. The pen will work the first time. Hers always does. You understand it. You sign it. The pen runs dry on the last letter of your name, and you borrow the principal's and finish. You sit in the closing office of a Long Island title company on a Friday in April, and your new husband signs 47 pages of mortgage paperwork, while the agent slides the documents across the desk one at a time. The house is in Levittown. It is identical to 17,446 other houses in a development built between 1947 and 1951. Your name appears on the deed in the position reserved for spouses. You do not raise this. The pen moves to the next page. The house costs $6,990. That's roughly $85,000 in 2024 dollars, which sounds reasonable until you remember that you personally cannot get a mortgage, open a line of credit, or sign a lease without a male co-signer because the Equal Credit Opportunity Act won't exist until 1974. You're not buying a house. You're adjacent to someone who is. The distinction is legal, not emotional, which is how most distinctions work in this office. $6,990 buys 800 square feet of Cape Cod style, small, square, and reliably identical, with a kitchen positioned to face the backyard. The kitchen window is not a design choice. It is a surveillance post. The builder, William Levitt, understood that a woman working in the kitchen needed a sightline to the children, and he provided one with the same practical logic he used for drainage ditches and utility easements. The kitchen faces the yard. The yard is fenced. The children are contained. You are not, technically, but the geometry is suggestive. Every house on the block has the same floor plan with minor variations, which means every woman on the block has the same morning, same counter, same window, same angle of February light. Doris, from 2 doors down, is at her window right now. You'll meet her on Tuesday. She'll know your floor plan better than you do, because she has the same one. The agent, a thin man named Mr. Whitlock with 3 pens in his shirt pocket, slides the GI Bill paperwork across with 2 fingers. The Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944 guaranteed over 2.4 million home loans for veterans between 1944 and 1952, with low interest rates and no down payment required. Your husband qualifies, you don't, mister. Whitlock has done this 1,400 times since the development opened, and his hand knows the rhythm, slide, point, wait, stamp. He doesn't watch the paperwork, he watches the wall clock. The clock reads 2:48. Mr. Whitlock has a closing scheduled at 3:30. The wall clock has been 3 minutes fast since 1952, and Mr. Whitlock has not corrected it, because correcting it would mean admitting he has been 3 minutes early to every meeting for 4 years. The VA loan doesn't technically require a wife, but Levittown's marketing materials do. The development was explicitly advertised toward young married couples. Print ads showed a man in a short-sleeved shirt and a woman in a shirtwaist dress standing in front of a door that has their last name on it. One last name, singular. The door knows what kind of family you are before you've moved the furniture in. A notary named Gerald stamps the final page without looking up. He has a small American flag on his desk in a weighted brass base and a photo of children he glances at periodically. He slides you a copy and says, "Congratulations, missus," and fills in the surname with comfortable certainty. You take the copy. It is warm from the machine. The house is 40 miles from Manhattan. Your husband will commute. You will not, because there's no train to take you anywhere useful, and the car is one car and it leaves at 7:15. Gerald hands you a small set of keys on a brass ring engraved with the lot number. He says, "Welcome home." He says it the same way he said it to the woman 3 weeks ago whose deed he stamped, and to the woman before her. You are 20. The wedding was a Saturday in June. You are 20. The brass ring is warm. The pen moves to the last page. You watch it move. You stand at the sink at 3:15 in the afternoon with both hands in the dishwater and watch the 2 children through the window above the faucet because that is what the window is for. The Levittown floor plan was engineered to make this exact view possible. Your line of sight, the height of the windowsill, the distance to the swing set, all of it was decided by a developer in 1947 so that you could supervise without leaving the room you were already supposed to be in. You do not leave the room. You rarely leave the room. The window above the sink is not a design flourish. It's a scheduling decision. The kitchen faces the backyard so that child supervision and dishwashing can share a time slot, which means you never have to stop doing one to do the other. Efficiency is the word for this. You use the word efficiency. It sounds better than the alternative. The view doesn't change. The grass is the same grass as the house to the left and the house to the right, because all 3 yards were seeded, short, dense, and slightly aggressive, on the same Thursday in 1949 by the same crew. The swing set came with the development, or close enough. 2 children on it now, yours, doing what children do, which is fall off things at the moment you look away, you look back. Both still attached. You return to the dishwater, which has gone cold because that is what dishwater does when you've been standing here long enough. Meanwhile, 14,446 other women in Levittown are looking through the same window at approximately the same time. Different children, same yard, same water temperature. The uniformity isn't accidental, it's the point. Levittown produced 17,447 nearly identical homes between 1947 and 1951 at $6,990 each, which made it, in a certain light, the largest identical experience delivery system since the assembly line. The assembly line at least moved. A neighbour, Mrs. Palumbo, who lives 4 doors down and always dries her hands on her apron before answering the door, even when she's not cooking, knocked this morning to borrow a cup of something. She stood on the step and talked for 11 minutes about a carpet stain and a paediatrician's appointment, and whether the new Jell-O mold flavour was worth the trouble. She left. You watched her walk back through the yards, cutting the corner the way everyone cuts the corner, wearing the same kind of shoes you're wearing, heading toward a window that looks like yours. You waved. She didn't see it. The baby, not a baby anymore, technically. 18 months, mobile and recently opinionated, has views about the cabinet under the sink. You shut the cabinet. The cabinet opens. You shut it again. The cabinet has developed a philosophy about personal autonomy, and it is expressed entirely through the hinge. By 1957, the birth rate hit 25.3 per 1,000 people. 76 million babies born between 1946 and 1964, each one of them, at some point, discovered a cabinet. The percolator finished 20 minutes ago and the coffee is stale, but you pour it anyway because it's 3:15 and the afternoon still has hours left in it, and somewhere on the counter, behind the percolator, is the prescription bottle that got refilled last Thursday without much comment from anyone. 36 million Milltown prescriptions by 1957, disproportionately for women your age, in houses like this one, at this hour. The bottle doesn't have a name for what it's treating. It doesn't need one. The hour has a name. The hour is 3:15. You finish the dishes. You dry your hands. You check the window one more time. Both children still there, operating the swing set with the chaotic intensity of small people who have nowhere to be. You turn away from the window, which means you're looking at the kitchen now. The counter, the cabinet, the percolator, the bottle, the table set for dinner because you set it at 2. The room is exactly what it was designed to be. That was someone else's decision. You live in it. You sit in Dr. Mendel's waiting room with the baby on your lap and a copy of Dr. Spock's Baby and Child Care in your tote bag. The book is 400 pages long. You have read it twice. By 1956, it has sold roughly 4 million copies. Dr. Mendel will see you in approximately 20 minutes, and he will ask you the same 6 questions he asks every mother, and he will write in your file whether you appear to be coping. The word coping is not defined in the file. The judgment is left to him. The book arrived in 1946, the same year the babies started arriving in earnest, and it sold 500,000 copies in its first year alone. The full title is Baby and Child Care, and its first line, "Trust yourself. You know more than you think you do," is warm and reassuring right up until you read the next 399 pages, which spend considerable energy explaining everything you're doing wrong. Spock's central argument is that maternal presence at home is not a preference but a developmental necessity. The science sounds firm, The science has opinions about your schedule. Erik Erikson arrives around the same time, academically speaking, with Childhood and Society in 1950. Erikson, lean and Viennese and faintly disappointed in your generation, describes female identity as oriented toward what he calls inner space, domestic, maternal, and inward-facing. He means this as psychology. It reads, in practice, like a zoning ordinance. Mrs. Fleck has read neither. Mrs. Fleck has, however, prepared the examination room 6,000 times. She knows which book Dr. Mendel is going to recommend before he opens his mouth. Doctor. Mendel opens the door and calls your name. He has a clipboard. He always has a clipboard. A nurse named Mrs. Fleck adjusts the paper on the examination table with the flat efficiency of someone who has adjusted paper on examination tables approximately 6,000 times and has feelings about it that she keeps folded somewhere neat and unreachable. The baby is weighed. You are observed. The file gets a notation. The questions are about sleep, the baby's sleep, not yours, about feeding intervals, about your mood, which doctor. Mendel approaches sideways, the way you might approach a dog of uncertain temperament, asking first whether you've been getting out of the house, then whether you have support, then pausing just long enough for you to understand that the correct answer is yes to both. You say yes to both. Mrs. Fleck writes something down. You don't see what. The Milltown doesn't really enter the conversation. It materializes on a small white prescription pad, torn off with a sound like a single quiet decision being made. 36 million prescriptions have been written by 1957, disproportionately for women between 25 and 40, disproportionately for women who have described, in various waiting rooms, various forms of tiredness that don't have a clean medical name. Milltown is meprobamat. It is a tranquilizer. It is the pharmaceutical version of telling someone to calm down, except a doctor wrote the order and your insurance covers it. The bottle will sit next to the percolator. You will not mention it to anyone. Neither will they. Spock's book, for what it's worth, says nothing about the mother's inner space. There is no chapter on what happens to the woman who read 2 years of chemistry before the baby came. There is no index entry for that particular subject. You check. The book is thorough about everything else. Teething, colic, the correct emotional temperature of a home, but the mother exists in its pages mostly as a condition the baby requires. Like warmth. Like regular meals. Present, necessary, not a subject in her own right. You put the Spock back in the tote bag. The baby has fallen asleep on your shoulder. Doctor. Mendel's waiting room has 3 other mothers in it, each holding a book or a child or both, each appearing to be coping in the way that is required for the file. Nobody looks up. The radiator ticks. Mrs. Fleck calls the next name. You host 14 women in your living room on a Tuesday evening because the Tupperware distributor assigned to your zip code has identified you as a likely organizer based on your church attendance and your husband's salary band. The distributor brings the catalogs, the order forms, and a small carrying case of demonstration units, and she runs the meeting from your coffee table with the energy of a regional sales manager. You serve coffee and a bundt cake. You are credited with the social capital of having hosted. The Tupperware itself seals. You press the lid down and it releases a small satisfied pop, which is, technically, applause for trapped air. Earl Tupper introduced the airtight burp seal design in 1946, and for several years nobody bought it because nobody understood it. Then in 1948 a woman named Brownie Wise started selling it at home parties in Florida, and within 4 years she'd built a distribution network that outperformed every department store in the country. Brownie Wise became the first woman to appear on the cover of Business Week in 1954. Earl Tupper fired her in 1958 and erased her name from most company materials. The containers survived. They still pop. The party has a structure. It's not a gathering. There are demonstration segments, a testimonial portion, and a closing window for orders. The distributor, her name is Gwendolyn, and she uncaps her pen with the practiced confidence of someone who has done this 200 times, works through the product line in ascending price order. She holds each piece up. She presses the lid. She waits for the pop. Every woman in the room reacts to the pop. Nobody acknowledges that everyone is reacting to the pop. Gwendolyn writes down each woman's order in a small green notebook, in pencil, with the steady, undefensive efficiency of someone running a payroll. She earns a commission on every container. The woman who recruited her earns a smaller commission underneath. The woman who recruited that woman earns less still. Gwendolyn caps the pencil between orders and retucks her cardigan with a single, neat, slightly weary tug. She has hosted 42 parties this year. The cardigan knows. Gwendolyn doesn't call it sales work. She calls it her Tuesday evenings. She slides the order slips into a manila envelope, taps the envelope twice on her knee to settle the edges, and sets it down on top of the catalogues. The catalogues are last year's. The current ones come in the mail on Thursday. Gwendolyn already knows which products will be discontinued because she has been doing this since 1951, and the company sends the distributors the discontinuation list a month before it tells anyone else. The products are genuinely useful. A celery keeper that holds moisture, a canister that seals flour against the particular despair of pantry moths, a bowl that travels without leaking, which matters when you are producing the volume of potato salad this era demands. You write down 3 items on the order form. The distributor writes down your selections in her notebook with the seriousness of a notary. You are, technically, participating in the consumer economy. You are doing it from a floral sofa at 8:15 on a Tuesday, which is the only slot available to you. By 1954, Tupperware had pulled its products from retail shelves entirely. You could not buy it in a store. You could only buy it at a party from a woman in a living room. Gwendolyn packs the last container back into the carrying case, snaps the latches twice. The second snap is for confirmation, the same way you check a stove burner you already turned off, and folds the order forms into the side pocket. She'll do this again on Thursday at Mrs. Peterson's. The containers still pop. The math still doesn't simplify. You attend the monthly Parent-Teacher Association meeting at the elementary school and sit in a folding chair in the second row and listen to the new bake sale chairwoman explain the volunteer rotation. The volunteer rotation is the social organism of the suburb. 23 women rotate through 11 committee positions, and the committee positions confer social legibility. The chair of the Spring Carnival is known at the supermarket as the chair of the Spring Carnival. You volunteer for the cake table. You always volunteer for the cake table. The PTA is not a school governance body. It's a staffing agency with a newsletter, efficient, unpaid, and quietly mandatory. The chairwoman, Dorothea Marsh, opens her 3-ring binder and reads the volunteer rotation from the laminated front page. Field trips, holiday concerts, spring carnival, winter book fair, fall bake sale, spring bake sale, the separate pie-specific bake sale in March that nobody has ever been able to explain. She does not editorialize, she does not need to. The cake table has its own hierarchy. Dorothea Marsh has run it for 3 years and brings a double-layer lemon chiffon every single time, unfrosted on the sides, which is a choice that reads as deliberate. She hands you a laminated sheet with assigned arrival times, suggested donation prices, and a note at the bottom reminding volunteers to smile at parents who are still getting comfortable with the community. The laminated sheet has been laminated so many times it's nearly opaque. Dorothea does not explain the lamination. You don't ask. Your participation is tracked, not on paper but in the social register everyone in the room maintains without discussing it. Attend twice, leave early once, skip once, you're unreliable. Attend every meeting, chair a committee, bring something layered, you're solid. Solid means your children get looked after when you're running late. Solid means the neighbour calls you first. Solid means the paediatrician's receptionist fits you in on a Thursday. Across town, in a different elementary gymnasium with different folding chairs, Dorothea's equivalent is named Carol Whitcomb and is reading her own laminated sheet to her own row of seated women. Carol's lemon chiffon is also unfrosted on the sides. Carol does not know Dorothea. Levittown has 17,447 units, and the meeting is currently happening in approximately 60 of them. You bake the night before. The kitchen smells like vanilla extract and the particular metallic warmth of an oven that's been on for 2 hours, and the children are in bed, and the television in the next room is running an episode of Father Knows Best to an empty sofa. You frost the top. You don't frost the sides. You are not yet a Dorothea, but you are paying attention. The meeting ends at 9. You fold your chair and lean it against the wall and help Dorothea carry the unsold cake to her station wagon. She wraps the remaining pieces in wax paper with a practiced efficiency, like a field surgeon who has seen this particular wound before. On the drive home, you pass 6 houses with kitchen lights still on, other women finishing the same calculation, itemizing their hours against the soft social ledger that doesn't pay anything and doesn't stop running. The Milltown bottle is on the counter when you get home. You don't take one. Not tonight. You put the cake stand in the sink and turn off the kitchen light and go to bed, and tomorrow you will write thank you notes to the volunteers because Dorothea sent you the list. You drive to the pharmacy on a Thursday morning with a refill slip from Dr. Mendel for a small white prescription bottle of meprobamat, which is sold under the brand name Milltown, which the pharmacist on duty already has on the shelf because by 1957, 36 million prescriptions for it have been written. The pharmacist does not ask why you need it. You did not say why you needed it. Dr. Mendel did not require a reason. The refill takes 7 minutes. The pharmacist's name is Gerald. Gerald has a small moustache and the demeanor of someone who has filled this particular prescription so many times that the bottle practically labels itself. He hands it over in a small paper bag, folded at the top with 2 precise creases, and says have a nice day with the exact tone of a man who means it about the day but not necessarily about anything else. You take the bag. You drive home. Milltown was introduced in 1955. By 1957, it was the fastest-selling pharmaceutical product in American history, which is the kind of record that sounds like a triumph until you ask who was buying it. The answer is women. Specifically women between 25 and 40. Specifically women in the suburbs. The drug worked by doing what the suburb itself had been doing, quieting the thing that kept noticing the distance between the life you were told you wanted and the one you were actually living. The bottle doesn't say that on the label. The label says meprobamat, 400 milligrams, take 1 tablet as needed. As needed is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Dr. Mendel asked you exactly 4 questions at the last appointment, brisk, polite, and faintly distracted. He asked how you were sleeping. He asked if you were feeling anxious. He checked your pulse with 2 fingers on your wrist and a look of polite professional distance, the way you might assess a car that's running a little rough but will probably get you to the end of the street. He wrote the prescription in under 3 minutes on a small pad, tore the page with a clean snap, and handed it to you with the satisfied expression of a man who has solved something. The appointment cost $4. You did not mention the part where you stood in the laundry room on Tuesday for 22 minutes without being able to remember why you'd gone in there. That did not seem like information, Doctor. Mendel was collecting. By 1957, the American Medical Association had not yet classified overprescription of tranquilizers as a concern. The women receiving them were not considered to have a medical problem. They were considered to have an adjustment problem, which the DSM-I, published in 1952, had conveniently already categorized adjustment reaction of adult life. Not a diagnosis so much as a filing system. The bottle sits on the kitchen counter next to the percolator. This is not hidden. There is no reason to hide it. Half the women on the cul-de-sac have the same bottle, refilled on a rotating schedule that no one discusses but everyone understands, the way no one discusses the PTA cake table hierarchy but everyone understands that too. A neighbour named Patricia refills hers on Tuesdays. You know this because you have seen her in the pharmacy parking lot on a Tuesday, and you have both smiled the exact same smile and said the exact same nothing and gotten back into your respective cars. The percolator gurgles. The bottle waits. The backyard through the kitchen window is very still and bright and empty. Milltown is not the goop moon juice of its day. Moon juice, at minimum, lets you feel interesting. Milltown just lets you feel less. Less what? Less loud inside. Less aware of the specific texture of a Tuesday afternoon when the children are at school and the house is clean and there is genuinely nothing left to do, and you are 29 years old and this is, according to everyone who has ever weighed in on the subject, exactly the life you were supposed to want. You take 1 tablet. You put the bottle back next to the percolator. The percolator doesn't comment. It never does. You sit up in bed at 11:40 on a Tuesday and open the small hardcover book your mother gave you the week before the wedding, because something about today has reached a point where consulting a book seems reasonable. The book covers intimacy, finances, child-rearing, household appliances, and the husband's mood. You turn to the chapter on the husband's mood, which is the longest. The chapter on your own mood is 16 pages. None of the 16 pages describe what to do if it persists. You close the book. The book is one of approximately 9 books in the house. The others are a Bible, a Spock, 2 condensed Reader's Digest volumes, a cookbook with a ring stain on page 43, a repair manual for the Frigidaire, and something your college roommate sent as a joke that you've kept spine down on the shelf since 1953. Dr. Spock takes up more mental real estate than the Bible in most houses on this street. He sold 500,000 copies in the first year alone. His central argument is that your presence, specifically yours, specifically at home, specifically all day, is what stands between your child and permanent psychological damage. He states this warmly. The warmth is part of it. The shelf beside the bed is small, crowded, and faintly self-conscious. There's a glass of water. There's a notepad where you write grocery lists that start in the middle of the night. There's no novel, because the novel has been sitting on the nightstand for 4 months at page 68, and you've read page 68 3 times in distinct states of mind. There's the marriage book, now closed. And there's a small amber bottle, which you moved from the kitchen counter this afternoon for reasons you haven't articulated, even to yourself. The bottle doesn't require articulation. It just sits there with the quiet authority of something that has already made its case. The marriage manual is one of dozens like it on bookshelves up and down the block. Mrs. Peterson across the street has one with a yellow cover. Patricia down the street has the same one as you, blue, with the spine slightly cracked at chapter 4. The author of yours is a Dr. Hannah Stone, who has a medical degree and a husband and a deeply settled tone of voice on the page. She advises you, in chapter 2, to keep a small mirror in your purse for emergency lipstick checks. The advice is delivered the same way she advises you on intimacy, calm, professional, mildly resigned. A woman named Patricia down the street has a copy of the same book. You've never discussed it. You've both pretended it doesn't exist in the same way you've both pretended the amber bottles don't exist, which is to say, openly and without comment. Patricia's copy has a bookmark in the chapter on entertaining, which either means she's read that far or she stopped there deliberately. Patricia trained as a legal secretary before the wedding. She typed 90 words per minute. She doesn't type anymore. The chapter on finances runs to 8 pages and addresses your role as a careful household steward, budgeting the weekly allowance your husband provides, stretching the grocery money, keeping a ledger. It does not mention that until 1974, 20 years from now, you cannot open a bank account in your own name without a male cosigner. Dr. Hannah Stone has no chapter on that. She probably doesn't know. Her royalties go into an account in her husband's name. You put the book on the nightstand. Outside, the street is quiet in that specific Levittown way. The houses spaced just far enough apart that you can hear someone else's television through the wall but not make out the words, which is somehow lonelier than silence. Somewhere, a few blocks over, a baby is making its opinion known about 11:40 on a Tuesday. The baby is correct. You turn out the light. The book will still be there in the morning. It always is. You sit in Dr. Mendel's office in a folding chair next to his desk and describe a feeling that you do not have a vocabulary for. And Dr. Mendel writes adjustment reaction in your file because the 1952 diagnostic manual does not contain a more specific term for what you are describing. The treatment is rest, the company of other women, and a refill of the small white bottle. You receive all 3. The small white bottle is squat, opaque, and aggressively unremarkable, about the size of your thumb. Milltown, meprobamate, introduced 1955, moves through American pharmacies the way Aquanet moves through teenage bathrooms. Fast, without comment. By 1957, 36 million prescriptions have been written, disproportionately for women between 25 and 40. Gerald, the pharmacist, refills yours on Thursdays. Susan Pryor's gets refilled on Tuesdays. The pharmacy counter has a small wire rack behind it where Gerald keeps the ones picked up regularly. Yours has been on the rack for 14 months. Dr. Mendel is not a bad man. He leans forward when you speak. He nods. He writes, he has a degree from a very good school and a waiting room with 3 chairs and a rubber plant that has been dying slowly for approximately 4 years. He believes what the manual tells him, which is that adjustment reactions resolve with time, rest, and the right domestic conditions. He writes, inadequate coping response on the second line. He does not write down what you said about the afternoons. He caps his pen. The DSM-I, published 1952, contains a category called frigidity. It contains hysteria. It contains adjustment reaction of adult life. These categories are not evenly distributed. They accumulate, reliably, around women in their late 20s who stopped working, who moved somewhere new, who find the afternoons long and the evenings not much shorter. The manual has no category for the house is very quiet and I used to be faster at things. Adjustment reaction covers it. Adjustment reaction covers a great deal. Milltown has a nickname before the Rolling Stones write the song. They call it Mother's Little Helper in the medical journal full-page ads. The advertising, and there is advertising, full page in medical journals shows a woman in a cardigan looking slightly improved. Not happy. Improved. The distinction is pharmaceutical. Milton Berle jokes about it on television, which means it has become the kind of problem you can mention in a room and have everyone laugh, which is one way a problem stays a problem. Susan Pryor, who is sitting in the waiting room when you leave Dr. Mendel's office, adjusts the strap of her purse and gives you the small particular nod of women who share a waiting room without being introduced. She has the same small white bag from the pharmacy. She doesn't comment on yours. You don't comment on hers. There is an entire grammar of not commenting that suburban women develop in the mid-1950s. It is fluent and unwritten and everyone speaks it perfectly. Rejecting the adjustment was its own diagnosis. Lesbian identity is classified in the DSM-I as sociopathic personality disturbance until 1973. A woman who doesn't want to marry isn't categorized as someone who doesn't want to marry. She is categorized as someone whose social adjustment has failed at a clinical level. The form doesn't have a checkbox for preference. It has a checkbox for deviation. It checks the box and moves on. By 1957, the tranquilizer market is the fastest growing pharmaceutical category in the country. Wallace Laboratories, the company that makes Milltown, takes out a full-page ad in the November American Journal of Psychiatry that shows a woman in a cardigan, smiling at the camera in a kitchen, holding a bottle. The bottle is the only thing in focus. The smile is calm, even, and slightly tired. The art director got the smile right on the third take. You walk out of Dr. Mendel's office into a February afternoon. The light is flat and the sidewalk smells like ice. The small white bag is in your coat pocket. You have a casserole to start by 4. The adjustment reaction, per your file, is being managed. The afternoons are still the same length they were this morning. The file doesn't know that yet. You sit at the kitchen table on a Sunday evening and help your 17-year-old daughter fill out the application to a 4-year co-educational university that did not admit women as undergraduates until 2 years ago. Your daughter intends to study mathematics. You did not study mathematics. Your mother did not study mathematics. The kitchen is silent except for the scratch of her pen and the hum of the refrigerator. Both of you are aware that the application is a kind of door. The application asks for a guidance counselor signature. Your daughter's counselor is a Mr. Albrecht, brown cardigan, soft voice, and faintly resigned, who keeps a wooden nameplate on his desk that says Goudance in block letters, as if the desk needed reminding. A 1961 study in the Journal of Counseling Psychology found that counselors like Mr. Albrecht systematically steered girls away from 4-year colleges when they were assessed as having what the study called marriage potential. Marriage potential is not defined in the study. It doesn't need to be. Mr. Albrecht will know it when he sees it. Your daughter has good posture. She has good posture because her mother has good posture, and because 17 magazine spent 3 years explaining the load-bearing importance of posture to a readership that was, on average, 15. She fills in intended major and writes mathematics in the box with the pen pressing harder than necessary. The pen doesn't comment. The application form has no box for guidance counselor's opinion of your marriageability, which is the only box that will actually matter on Monday morning. Mr. Albrecht has a script for Monday and he doesn't know he has a script. Your daughter sits across from him Monday morning at 9:15. He opens her folder. He doesn't say he thinks she should get married instead of studying mathematics. He says he wants to make sure she's considered all her options. He says she seems like someone who would be very happy in a people-oriented field. He says it while looking slightly past her left ear, and he means it completely. He adjusts his cardigan exactly once during the conversation. Your daughter says thank you and walks out and writes the conversation down verbatim in the back of the notebook on the bus ride home. The year is 1969. Yale and Princeton admitted their first female undergraduates this September. Harvard and Radcliffe won't fully integrate for another 8 years. Your daughter knows this. She has the dates written in pencil at the top of her notebook the same way you used to write the median marriage age, as a reference number, neutral, not for argument. The pencil mark is small. The mark sits where she can see it. The guidance office isn't the only room with an opinion. A 1960 Cornell study found that over 60% of female students at a major coeducational university listed finding a husband as a primary reason for attending college. Your daughter would tell you she is not those women. She might even be right. She sits at the kitchen table at 9:30 on a Sunday and checks the mathematics prerequisites a second time, not because she missed anything, but because checking feels like a kind of argument she is making to the room. You watch her do this. You have spent most of her life preparing her for a set of circumstances that are, right now, rearranging themselves. You taught her to make a bed with hospital corners. You taught her the ribbon in the hair rule. Not from the Good Wife's Guide exactly, but close enough that the difference doesn't matter. You owned a girdle at 13. So did she briefly before she decided she didn't. The girdle had 20 yards of feeling strongly about itself, and your daughter had more. You buy a copy of Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique at the Doubleday on a Saturday in March 1963 because 3 women in your bridge club have already read it, and you do not want to be the only one in the room who has not. You read it in 9 days. The book contains an interview with a Smith alumna whose language is so close to yours that you put the book down twice and walk into the kitchen and stand there. You stand at the counter. You do not move for several minutes. The book's central argument isn't complicated. Friedan calls it the problem that has no name. She means the specific flatness, not grief, not illness, not anything diagnosable, that settles into a woman who has done everything correctly and finds the correct life somehow insufficient. You have heard this feeling described before, in careful language, as adjustment difficulties, as nerves, as not trying hard enough to be grateful. You recognize it the way you'd recognize your own handwriting on someone else's envelope. Friedan spent 5 years on the research. She surveyed her Smith College classmates for their 15th reunion and found a pattern nobody had named in print. Educated women, routed into domesticity at 20, by 35 were describing a sensation of slow disappearance, not depression exactly, more like watching yourself from a moderate distance while someone else loads the dishwasher. The women Friedan interviewed called it, in their own words, feeling like nothing. The clinical term was adjustment reaction. Friedan's term was more accurate. The book cost Friedan 5 years and 2 publishers. The manuscript was rejected by 2 publishers, polite, brief, and faintly bewildered, before W. W. Norton took it. A McCall's editor turned down an excerpt on the grounds that the subject matter would upset readers. He wasn't wrong that it would upset readers. He was wrong about the direction. The book sold 1.4 million copies in its first 3 years. Your copy has a crease in the spine where you folded it back to read with one hand while the other stirred something on the stove. The stove did not find this ironic. You did. Martha Hennessy, who lives 2 blocks over and whose husband is in insurance, finishes her copy and leaves it on your porch without a note. Just the book, which tells you everything about how Martha is processing this. The book sits on your porch for 40 minutes before you bring it in and put it next to the percolator, which is where things go when you haven't decided what to do with them yet. The system Friedan describes is the same one you've been living in since approximately 1944. The guidance counselors, the home economics classroom, and its smell of fabric sizing and institutional butter. The 17 magazine sitting on your bed at 14 telling you how loud to laugh. The girdle you fastened before school with your mother standing behind you adjusting the hooks, both of you quiet, as though the hooks required concentration. All of it described, named, placed into a sentence. You'd been carrying these things separately for years without a word that connected them. The book has critics. Certain reviewers call it hysterical. One columnist writes that Friedan clearly doesn't appreciate what most women have. Another suggests the problem is that educated women simply read too much. These reviews are written by men, and the men who wrote them will, in about 6 years, find themselves in institutions that are legally required to admit their daughters. Nobody makes this connection in print yet. You make it privately, standing at the counter on a Tuesday in April. Your daughter is 9 in 1963. She is currently in the backyard doing something with a stick and a jar. You watch her through the kitchen window, the window positioned, like every Levittown kitchen window, to face the yard so you can monitor children while you work. The window was designed for supervision. Today it goes both ways. You watch her, and she doesn't know she's being watched, and she doesn't know about the book on the counter, and she doesn't know that the world she's going to apply to college in will look different from yours, and that you are part of the reason why. Standing at a window with a crease-spined book and a cooling cup of coffee and a name, finally, for the thing you'd been trying to describe since 1951. You sit in a different doctor's office in 1965 and ask for a prescription for the oral contraceptive Enovid, which the FDA approved in 1960 and which is now available to married women in most states. The doctor writes the prescription. He does not require your husband's signature, although he could. Some doctors still do. The prescription is for a 1-month supply. You will refill it for the next 11 years. The pill is small, smaller than you expected for something this consequential. You take it every morning with the same glass of water you use for the aspirin, next to the percolator, 2 steps from the spot where the Levittown bottle used to sit before you stopped refilling that one. The Levittown made the mornings softer and the afternoons blurred, and the years go by faster when everything is blurred. The pill does not blur anything. It just gives you, for the first time, a thing that previously belonged to biology and timing and luck, a decision. The decision is small, conditional, and slightly second-hand. You can't use it to get a job that pays what your husband earns. The gap is still $1,533 a year, and the union hall is still mostly his. You can't use it to open a credit account without his signature, because that law won't exist for another 9 years. You can't use it to rent an apartment on your own in most cities without a male guarantor, because landlords are under no obligation to pretend otherwise. What the decision gives you is time. Not freedom in the abstract, just time. Specifically, the next month. Miriam, the woman 2 doors down on your street, got her prescription the same week you did. She told you over the back fence, quietly, the way she'd told you about the Friedan book, that particular low voice women use for things that are technically permitted but not exactly encouraged. She holds her coffee cup with both hands when she talks. She's been doing it since her 3rd baby. The cup is something to do with your hands when you're saying something true. By 1965, roughly 6 million American women are on the pill. The pharmaceutical literature still describes it primarily as a treatment for menstrual irregularity. The irregularity it's treating is somewhat broader than that, but Searle, the manufacturer, prints the bottle anyway. The label says, cycle regulation in small, neat, faintly apologetic type. Miriam's bottle says the same thing. So does the bottle of every woman in the bridge club. They all read the label without commenting on the label. Your daughter is 9. She doesn't know what Enovid is. She knows the bottle is yours and she's not supposed to touch it. The same rule as the aspirin and the percolator and the good scissors. In 4 years, she'll be in high school. In 9 years, she'll be 18. The median marriage age for women is 20.3 this year, which is 0.2 of a point higher than the 1956 floor, which is not a revolution, but it is a direction. The kitchen window faces the backyard. She's out there now, doing something with a stick and a specific private logic you can't entirely follow from here. You watch her the way you always do, that particular quality of attention that has no name, just duration. The pill bottle is on the counter. The Friedan book is on the nightstand. She doesn't know about either of those yet. She'll figure it out. You stand in the hallway of your daughter's first apartment in 1975 and notice she has framed your wedding photograph and hung it on her front room wall. You are 20 in the photograph. Your daughter is 21, unmarried, and applying to law school. She did not put the photograph on her wall as evidence of anything. She put it there as orientation, a thing she walks past every morning to remind herself what she is and is not doing. You did not raise her to do this. She did it anyway. The photograph is not a warning, it's a bookmark. You look around the apartment. There's a textbook on the kitchen table with a library binding, the kind that smells like institutional glue and someone else's highlighter. A coffee mug. A legal pad covered in handwriting that tilts hard to the right like it's trying to get somewhere. The kitchen faces a brick wall, not a backyard. There are no children to watch. The window has an opinion about this, and that opinion is correct. She doesn't have a lot of things you did. She doesn't have a girdle. She doesn't have a crinoline. She doesn't have a bottle of Aqua Net positioned on the bathroom shelf like a small chemical monument to someone else's approval. She does have an Ovid, or its successor, because you handed her that particular piece of information the summer. She turned 17, quietly, in the kitchen, the way you'd hand someone a map before a long drive. She took it without ceremony. That felt right. She also doesn't have a ribbon. Not one. You check. Your daughter's LSAT registration form is on the table next to the textbook. Section 3 asks her age. She writes 21 in the small box and underlines the one for no reason you can identify. You were 19 and already engaged at her age. She doesn't look up. She moves to section 4. Your daughter didn't dismantle the system. She just read more than the system planned for. She sat in your home economics classroom in 1968, smelling fabric sizing and institutional cooking, and took notes on attracting a husband. And then she went home and read Frieden in your kitchen, in your reading chair, while you washed the dishes facing the window. The system taught her to read. A woman named Carol, your daughter's upstairs neighbour, knocks on the door and borrows a pen. She's also applying somewhere, medicine, she says, touching the doorframe like she's checking it's real. She and your daughter exchange a look that contains approximately 15 years of shared information, none of it spoken. Carol leaves with a pen. She doesn't bring it back. It doesn't matter. You stand in the hallway a moment longer. The wedding photograph looks back at you. 20 years old, a ribbon in your hair. Because the guide said so, because everyone said so, because the alternative in 1956 had a name, and the name was not flattering. Your daughter walks past it every morning and keeps walking. The ribbon stays on the wall. So, that was the day. The girdle at 13, the ribbon before he gets home. The flour sack baby you carried for 2 weeks without dropping. The brochure for nursing school slid across a guidance counselor's desk by a woman with a folder and a wrist that didn't bother her brain anymore. The bus to New Haven. The crinoline rustling on linoleum. The 4,000 letters a week to a woman named Betty who did not, technically, exist. And the women who carried all of it. The ones who took the factory jobs in 1942 and were handed their coats in 1945. The ones who refilled the small white bottle on a Thursday morning without much comment from anyone. The ones who, eventually, framed their own wedding photograph as a thing to walk past on the way to law school. Thank you as always for spending the evening with me. Now let your shoulders drop. Let the crinoline stay in the closet. Let the dishes wait until morning. Sleep well.